All right. So, well, thank you so much to everybody who has joined. I'm so glad you guys were able to make some time. It's, such an adventure to be able to do this in such a different format than what I'm used to. Obviously, I'm much more accustomed to speaking in front of a group of people in a public setting, much less a virtual setting. So, this is actually my first speaking engagement in front of a virtual setting. So, this will be new and exciting for me as well, too. So at any time, if you guys have questions, I definitely want you to stop. I did prepare a PowerPoint to be able to kind of keep us on track so I can, uphold to some of the promises that I had said that I would cover. But if there's something that definitely you want to discuss, that maybe we weren't able to, cover during this session, I want you to make sure to bring that up. Does that sound good to everybody? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Ah, yes. Okay. So I was like, got a quiet group. So, but first, let me go ahead and start off. I don't know how many of you might know me or may know anything about me, but my name is Lorene Dillard, as you had seen on the invite. I am not just somebody in the professional field, but I actually have two adult, I don't want to say children, but two adult individuals who, of course, are my sons who have disabilities. They're now age 20 and 21. They both have a diagnosis of autism. So they did receive their diagnosis at age 2 and 3. So we've kind of navigated this field for quite some time and have been able to receive services in the community. We were able to get one of the very lucky few that they were about age 8 and 9 when they were able to access the Medicaid waiver programs from the CLASS program in particular. And so, of course, with that, we've been kind of navigating community supports and been able to, of course, the educational system and so forth as well. My path almost 20 years ago kind of took the realm in being able to help other families as I worked in nonprofit, been able to work with various nonprofits, being able to work with local education agencies, and looking at how to be able to help advocate with other families and young adults to be able to help ensure that they were receiving their appropriate education as well as their community supports. So just, I like to kind of start off with that so people don't just think I'm another one of those professionals out there telling them what to do. So I am somebody who kind of lives it every single day. And of course, have experienced a lot of the struggles. As a matter of fact, with this COVID situation, I'm going through with my 20-year-old some pretty significant struggles right now with some behaviors due to this COVID. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. Let me know if anybody's having any difficulty with seeing it. Okay, it's kind of, can everybody see it okay?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So what we're going to discuss today is pretty much what I was, informed that everybody was interested in some information on. And that is, of course, what kind of all this looked like with this continuity and contingency planning and, what COVID kind of did to us with this whole educational piece. It was this whole new unprecedented event that happened in our community, right? And a lot of our educational system just kind of said, this is what we're going to give you, for your kid. And looking at how was this going to impact our kids and their education, and what were they going to be able to do to be able to provide our child with, their free appropriate public education. And of course, looking at how, they're accessing their services and what that might look like if they weren't able to access the full array of services on their IEP, or if they were experiencing some form of regression. So of course, for those of us who have been in special education for quite some time, is there any newbies, or are all you guys kind of, the veterans in the special education system? Everybody's veterans? Okay. So what I'm going to say from that is that y'all are pretty, familiar with the fact that being veterans within that, the whole compensatory education, as well as looking at regression, you're pretty used to hearing that concept. Well, when it comes to the compensatory education piece, it's going to look a little bit different with this whole continuity and contingency planning with COVID. So we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about that. And then, of course, last but not least, we're going to look at community services. I don't know if many of you have, of course, with the whole, first we were on lockdown, and then, of course, many of us are experiencing some challenges with feeling comfortable with going into our community. As many of us have children with disabilities, but also many of us may have children with disabilities that have medical concerns, that going into the community creates, a bit of hesitation and saying that it's just not safe. And so what can we do to help ensure that our adults with disabilities or our children with disabilities are able to continue to be able to access what's available in their community and still remain, active? So we're going to start with parent-student involvement. One of the biggest things that I saw was that, of course, under IDEA, there's that whole piece that says that parents have to stay involved, right? Big challenge that a lot of parents have is that sometimes, you get included, sometimes we're not so much included, right? Well, of course, understanding under the whole IDEA and understanding that parent involvement, you're a member of that ARD committee. Yes, I want to see everybody go yes. Okay, yes. So of course, if it is somebody who is over the age of 18 and have reached the age of majority, then what ends up happening at that point is that responsibility then shifts over to the young adult. And so unless the parent has retained guardianship, and so at that point, then we look at how that involvement looks. Now, what seemed to be a lot of confusion that happened with this contingency was I got a lot of parents calling me and saying that things had just changed, that they had gotten just all of a sudden an email from the school or a phone call saying that this is what we're going to provide your child during this distance learning time. And parents were kind of like, what? What is this? And of course, knowing what your child's IEP plan looks like, because, as parents, we all kind of know it by heart because we sit in these meetings, time after time again, and can recite their services by heart. What ends up happening is that we come back and say, well, this doesn't at all even meet what my child had on their IEP. Well, the continuity and contingency plan never released the fact that the parent should have been involved in that. So what ended up happening many of times is that schools just kind of created this and sent it to the parents and didn't tell the parents in many cases that they had that opportunity to be involved in that planning process. So, and not only that, if there was a plan created and the parent did not agree with it, then the parent had the right to be able to say they did not agree with it and to request a meeting. Because again, this would in essence be a change to your child's plan, would it not? Yes. Because of course, under what happened under IDEA, how many of you kind of followed and heard about that there were some care grants that were submitted? And so I know it gets very into the technical law pieces and so forth. Well, one of the kind of interesting pieces where some people may have been, following that, Becky DeVos, was going to grant schools, the waivers and saying that they didn't have to follow the special education under IDEA. Well, she actually came back and said, nope, they're going to have to follow it. And so there were actually no waivers even requested. So what it said was that all schools were going to have to follow every child's IEP. So of course, with that, what happens is that they would have to go through, every school district was held responsible, and just as it was under any other normal school circumstance, saying that under the IEP and the related service piece, that would have to be followed as such. And we'll go over that a little bit further. And of course, if changes were made to frequency or of services and supports, did you agree with this change? So what happened many a times was that parents were receiving all of this information in email. How many of you got like seriously 52 emails on a daily basis on your kid? Like, follow this link, go here, log in here, create this login, do this. I had so many parents call me, bless their heart, and they're like, I can't even keep up with my work email. Now all of a sudden I have 2 kids that are receiving special ed, and I've got teachers all over the place emailing me. Well, guess what was kind of hidden in those emails were certain things, such as maybe an email that may have come through that said, here's your child's continuity plan. If we don't hear from you within maybe 2 weeks, then we're going to basically assume you agree with it. So, of course, with that, that is not acceptable. So you need to be able to reply back and again, insist that your physical signature needs to be submitted along with that continuity plan. Looking at, were all IEP goals assessed during learning distance? I had continuity plans that were sent over for kiddos who had like 16 IEP goals for like physical learning. And then with COVID, remarkably, they only had 3. So, and again, from that, the school's response would be such things as, well, this is all we can provide during distance learning. Well, we need to talk about that, because actually, no, we're going to need to be a little bit more thinking outside the box. So this is something that when an IEP goal is written, yes, there are going to be some IEP goals that truly cannot be addressed through distance learning. However, you can rewrite an IEP goal that would allow that goal to be addressed within distance learning. There's nothing to say that you can't revise an IEP goal to be able to still hit the essence of that goal, but to allow it to be done via distance learning. So again, just saying that you can't do it because somebody can't be physically with that child is not an answer. Looking at, did your campus inform you that you could call an ARD to change supports? Many of the parents that I talked to were being told by the schools that they couldn't call an ARD, that it just, ARDs weren't going to happen until school resumed. That was not ever going to be an accurate statement. As many of you may have experienced or may not have, just as we're talking via Zoom, ARDs were happening all constantly. Meetings with schools, whether it be through Google Classroom or Zoom, that was something that was a requirement. Virtual meetings were never to have stopped. Looking at accessing the services. When we look at how services are provided, how did anybody experience actual, whether it be instructional time, occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy? Was there a change in the delivery of service, the frequency of service, things like that? Okay, I'm seeing a head shake. That was extremely common. I had everything from kids, obviously direct instruction was not going to happen because we were in distance learning. However, what was not always explored with kids was the opportunity to have virtual sessions. It was often done where schools just made a blanket decision that the child could not learn based off of a virtual session. Well, guess what? Again, the parent needs to be involved in that opportunity. The other thing too is that as an example, I have a family that I'm working with where, yes, collectively understood the child would not benefit from a virtual session. However, guess who would benefit from a virtual session? The parents. So why would we not set up sessions? Because guess who the teachers were during that time? The parents. So just as we were asking the parents to instruct based off of speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, to be able to do those types of therapeutic services with that child, those parents are not licensed therapists. Those parents are not teachers. So to assign those hours and time for that parent to actually virtually meet with that therapist or instructor would be very appropriate, so that they could go over the activity, so that that therapist could model it with that parent, so that they could go over the appropriate way to data collect if that was something that was agreed upon, so that maybe the parent could go over with the instructional teacher, this is how I've been doing it, at the home. Is this correct? Should I change something? Just because the student may not be able to do that with the teacher or the therapist does not mean those minutes cannot be assigned to the teacher, which is again going to be the parent. And the reason I say that as well is, how many of y'all have seen your child or your students related services where they break it out and say, this is going to be how many minutes your student receives, this is how many which will be direct with the student, this is how many are consultative, this is how many, and again, they'll explain it to you that this is how much will be with the teacher, this is how much. So again, who's the teacher now? It's going to be who's working with the student at home. So there's no reason why those sessions could not be allocated to, again, who is working with the student at home. Now, also the cut in services. If there is an evaluation that, let's just go ahead and talk about speech. If there's a speech and language evaluation that is, that's recent, that already indicates that a student's speech and language evaluation is going to require the student to receive 2 30-minute sessions per week in order to meet that IEP goal, then that evaluation is what drives that service, correct? So why, just because we're in a pandemic, do I now see continuity plans that are offering students literally less than a fourth of what is in their IEP goal? And the response from the school is, these are unprecedented times. This is what we're able to offer. This is not the discussion that we need to be having. The discussion that we need to be having is, at this unprecedented time, this individual needs to continue with consistency and structure that is being provided by the school. We understand that it can be difficult, that resources may be stretched. However, we cannot penalize the student for what is in the IEP. The current evaluation does dictate that this is the level of service. Then, oops, I apologize. Let me go back. Okay, were you given an, okay, so we talked about the virtual. Also, some parents I have spoken to have gone so far as, because the school district wasn't offering to go ahead and offer those services outside, meaning as contact, that they were able to get those services via private providers. So a lot of feedback that I have received from that is, and again, and this is in consultation with other individuals who are assisting, is in those situations, if many parents are continuing to want to go down that route, because again, it's been difficult to get, whether the school district to provide those contact hours, is to ensure to email your school district, provide them documentation that you are going to seek those contact hours, and then keep documentation from your private provider, so that when you return to school, then you can then request reimbursement. Because again, there is that opportunity that your child needs those contact hours in order to be able to make that progress. And if your child is not able to receive that through compensatory services, it may be a better option for your school district to just reimburse you for that service versus risk maybe a due process hearing. So when you look at how to be able to take that documentation, you look at compensatory education. Compensatory education has been like a big topic area because this is something that parents want to be able to, of course, not say to the school district, you didn't provide my child all of the services that are in their IEP, but you've cut them so dramatically that my child has regressed so significantly. How are we going to recoup those skills? Because again, the IEP is written to be able to say, we've done an evaluation that has already identified these are the service areas that your child needs in order to make educational progress. So just by a mathematical equation, if you remove those services, what can you anticipate happening? Is that your child would lose those educational benefits. So what happens for children, especially using autism as an example, autism is a diagnosis that requires a lot of consistency and structure. If you remove that consistency and structure, children on the autism spectrum will tend to regress. And so what then the schools look at is, can we bring their skill sets back within 8 weeks to be able to say that there was not an impact that could not be recouped within that 8-week period of time. Therefore, we do not owe them anything. Now, just to make sure that parents understand, compensatory education is never going to be calculated on a apples to apples basis. It's not going to say because you lost 300 hours of speech therapy, you're going to get 300 hours of speech therapy. What it's going to say is that there's an assessment done to say, this is the skill set that you've lost. This is what services it's going to take to bring that skill set back up. So again, if you've lost 300 hours of, 300 minutes of speech therapy, maybe it might be 150 minutes of speech and language therapy in addition to maybe some occupational therapy to be able to help address a skill set that was lost. So again, it's looking at the individual needs of that person. Looking at the information for data collection. A lot of parents have called me and had asked, how do I do data collection? This is a sticky point because I have been through due process with many families, and what is the big indicator for families when it comes to data collection? And this is going to be how data collection is taken. Well, lots of times what may happen is that campuses or districts will say, well, this is how the student performs in the home. So thank you so much, mom and dad, but we're going to look at what happens in the educational setting. That's what we're going to count. Or the parents could show up and say, I've been collecting data on how the behaviors have evolved in the evenings for the past 6 weeks. And the school's going to say, yeah, but see, we use a specific formula for collecting data, and that's not the way that you've done it. So we can't use your data to be able to say whether or not this is going to work. So there's two mindsets on how this is going to be approached. Is that one, school districts really should have been offering training to parents on how their school district collects data. So if your school did not offer you training on how to collect data, then what the other mindset, of course, too, is what has been the educational setting for your child since March? Home. So of course, if the educational setting has been home, then what's going to end up happening is that any data has to be accepted. Because if it was the educational setting has been home, anything that you offer to the school when you go back to ARD and say, my child did great when we sat at the dining room table and I played classical music and you list it all off, and this is what we were able to achieve. This is like the perfect time for parents to be able to really be heard at your ARD meeting and to be able to really come back, because guess what? We were the educational setting and we were the educators since March. So all that information, guess what? We as the parents are establishing our kids' PLAFs, which is going to drive their educational planning, because we are the ones who are coming in contact with our kids, and that information has to be put in our kids' IEPs. So you really want to make sure to go back to school with that information. Looking at how TEA defines compensatory, a lot of people had some misconceptions, and I just want to make sure, because I'm not hearing anybody. I hate to cut it off. Can somebody say something? Natalie, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I
Yes,
can hear
yes.
you. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I'm seeing head nodding, and I can see mouths moving, but I don't hear anything. So I just wanted to make sure. So looking at how TEA defines compensatory, and looking at how ESY is defined, that is something that a lot of parents got confused with. So TEA went so far as to go ahead and, put some information out there so that parents could really understand that. So instead of me like really putting all that in the slideshow, I just went ahead and put the site out here for you guys so that you could go and visit it. And it gives really good definitions to be able to look at how TEA recognizes compensatory and ESY, so that when you go to your next ARD meeting, this is a great information for you to print, especially if you really want to discuss compensatory at your next meeting. The best thing that you can do if a school is saying, well, we don't feel like your child meets compensatory, guidelines, you can actually come back and say, well, based on what Texas Education Agency says, this is why I think maybe he or she does. And to bring up those talking points. So, because the best thing that you can do is keep it away from your opinions and saying that, well, he threw the plunger in the bathroom at my head, and so I think he regressed. What you want to do is you want to come back and say, well, based on TEA guidelines, it states that if there is an increase in physical aggression, that there would be compensatory services based off of, and then you bring out your data that supports the different instances of things that have happened, so that it backs up what TEA has already identified. It makes it much harder for any of the schools to be able to argue your point. Then looking at communities, does anybody have any questions about anything I have said so far? I can go back to any slide. You guys are so quiet. I'm not used to this. Come on, there's no question that is not worth asking. Tell me, what challenges have you guys had? Because I saw lots of this going on. Nobody's gonna speak up.
If you'd rather, you can also type stuff in the chat and I can read it.
Yes. I promise you, like I tell my kids, and everybody too, I'm nice. I'm really nice. And I promise you, I don't judge. I can tell you right now, what my 20-year-old, oh my gosh, you don't want to tell you, he's had some behaviors lately. We didn't have any cussing until COVID. And now I got him cussing. Now he's got, we've got behaviors where he screams for no apparent reason, and it's yes, so I feel you. I've been there. So COVID stinks. Everybody froze. What happened?
I still see everybody. I don't know.
Oh,
Everybody's
okay.
quiet.
Yeah. I know, everybody's quiet. I'm like, geez, I'm gonna have to figure something out next time. I have to have one of my kids do a little show, something in the background. Okay, so then we'll talk a little bit about community services. So how many of you guys are just a little bit too scared to get your kids out there? Okay, so if nobody says anything, I'm going to assume that you guys are like getting out there and partying. So everybody's taking your kids everywhere like you did before COVID.
No.
Ah, yes, somebody said
No.
something. Yay, gold star. Yes, it's scary. It is so scary. I will tell you, as a mom myself, and all three of my kids, we all have an immune deficiency disorder. Like when I say immune deficiency disorder, like times 10. So it is, and my oldest son also has a heart condition. So we're kind of like the trifecta. So going out into the community is scary. But of course, what happens when we don't go out in the community, we start isolating ourselves and we end up with either behaviors or we end up losing skill, and it just kind of goes backwards, backwards, backwards. So, what we had to start doing is looking at how can we do this and how can we do this in like the safest way possible. So one of the things that we really started focusing on ourselves is looking at what our kiddos' main interests were. Again, I was lucky with one of mine. He loves Pokemon. So going out Pokemoning was pretty darn safe because, you could go outside, you could remain social distance, you could, do it early in the morning before it's, 150 degrees outside, all of that, and be able to still get him out and about, and we were all good. My other one, my 20-year-old, he really likes to do things like go shopping. He likes to go to the mall. He likes to go to Target. He likes to do all of those things that require being around a lot of people and underneath a roof. So the other good thing though too was he likes to do things like Six Flags, SeaWorld, those kind of things that really get him out and moving and flipped around and getting all that good stuff going. So the best thing, and if of course we're not able to do all the things that he really likes to do, which of course makes him angry, but at least we can get some of the things done that gets him out there versus when we were on total shutdown, because that was a disaster. So one of the things that I really like about some of the theme parks like Six Flags and SeaWorld, and some of y'all might go, oh, I've been to them. They're doing a fantastic job about making sure people social distance. We went to Six Flags. I never saw so many people, like meaning security guards, walking around, like, again, making people separate, if you didn't have a mask on, they were like, put your mask on. Every like 10 feet, there was like a gallon size thing of hand sanitizer. It was, and then of course they say they're going to have it at 25%. It is so empty in there. It is ridiculous. So the Six Flags and the have all worked out really well for us. The other good thing is both of them offer a program for individuals who have disabilities to be able to skip the line. So you don't have to be in that congested line around other people, which is again a nightmare. So for numerous reasons. So they have some requirements that are necessary to be able to get on that disability, which I'll be happy to send to Natalie that she can, make available to you guys. It's very simple, very easy. And then you're able to just skip all that line and be able to get right on the line and go. And so then you don't have to be around anybody, and they're super sensitive to be able to make sure that, you know, individuals with disabilities are super well taken care of. Travis is known on a first name basis, and they take amazing care of him. So that is, you know, just, you know, food for thought as well. There is also, I put a link down below to Texas Disabilities, which gives just this really comprehensive list of different resources. I kind of just put a screenshot. This is literally just half of the list of different resources that they offer, of just different things that you can click on to be able to access. Has just wonderful things that you can be able to look at how to be able to, for those who receive Medicaid waiver programs, you know, it is very difficult to navigate all the different requirements that they continue to put out there for us. This kind of summarizes it all for you, to be able to look at the different updates that are happening within schools, and how to be able to navigate that. Within that, looking at how to be able to really focus on not necessarily if your child or student enjoys getting out in the community, doing it at least to some extent in the safest way that you can is, I would have to say, the most advisable thing. You know, and I'm more than happy to help with anybody who just wants to email me, reach out. You know, I can send you tips, you know, those kind of things. I wanted to just provide you with something today, but because everybody is so individual on things that they enjoy doing, you know, to provide you with a roadmap is something I am happy to do with individuals, to be able to help. Because one of the things that I'm just very passionate about, because it's been such a difficult thing for our family, is being on this lockdown has been really hard for my youngest son. And I went from seeing him, I won't get choked up, but I went from seeing him talking and making so much progress and just really flourishing to he's really struggling and having behaviors that he's 20 years old now that we've never experienced before. So that's something that, you know, being able to help our students really be able to reach out to things that are very important to them is something that needs to continue to be honored. So I'm happy to help with anybody who might need that assistance. So here's my contact information. So, and again, Natalie, I'll send you this PowerPoint. You can make it available on your website, send it via email. I can convert it to a PDF so that you can send it to all of your participants who you feel might benefit from it, so that they'll be able to, you know, access it at any time as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, I had anticipated more questions today.
I know everybody's so quiet today.
I know. This is a topic that I get so many phone calls on, like on a daily basis. And so I just, you know, again, figured, I was like, I'm going to keep the slides pretty short, because I really pretty much figure everybody's going to just have a ton of questions. Does anybody have any like concerns that they're having with?
Hi, Ms. Dillard. This is Andrea Rogerio.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. It's because I'm in the middle of making dinner, so I'm kind of running back and forth.
No, you're fine.
I just wanted to say, you know, I'm an occupational therapist actually with the school district, and you know, I always like to, hear everything, from every angle. And I also have family members, with special needs, and something that I would love to do at some point in my life is, to become an advocate. So thank you, for sharing your information. And I know as far as, in OT and in our part, as far as related service, one of the things that I can say, in our part, and or at least on my behalf, it's difficult, like you said, I like what you said about, maybe we can't service the child directly, but, talking to the parents. And I think that's what a lot of us struggled with, is like, okay, how do we reach them? How do we do that? Like different ways, so I appreciate that. I really like that.
Yeah, and that's just where, I've talked to a lot of schools, because I work even with families outside of Texas, and just really working with schools on thinking outside the box. Just as schools continue to share with parents, these are unprecedented times. You're right, it is unprecedented times.
Right.
And it's really important for us to really think about, what are different ways that we can all work together.
Exactly.
And, it may mean that we work differently. So just like we are today.
Sometimes, yes, no, definitely. And I think, sometimes it's hard, we try to also get the guidance from our own districts, and sometimes they don't have the answers, and then we're kind of left like, well, then what do we do, So, I mean, I know I can speak on my behalf, I would love other ideas as to, how to best to meet, our students' IEPs. And it also gives me ideas, to tell my family members, as far as what can be asking for. And I always try to look at both ways. I'm on the district side, but I'm also always on the parent side too, and trying to understand, and see what to come up with the best, solution for the student. So.
Oh yeah, I had many parents asking, why can't I have the occupational therapist and the speech therapist in my home? And and I would say to them, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't know that you want them in your home.
Right. Exactly.
So again, the same thing, seeing it from both sides. It's very important to think of everybody's, health, safety, and well-being. So, let's see how we can do this in a safe way and meet everybody's needs.
Exactly. But I just wanted to say thank you. It was very, very enlightening and a good presentation.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was super good. Thank you so much. It was good information. We'll definitely pass on to our families.
Absolutely. Thanks for hosting it.
Yeah, of course.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Nice to meet whoever's in the background. Hello.
Say hi. Say hi. No, don't leave. Say hi. Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Want to say something? We just got this new communication book, so we're working on it.
That's awesome.
Want to try something? Say, nice to meet you, he says. Awesome. Good job.
Well, thank you. Nice to meet you. It has been a pleasure. Virtual high five.
Virtual high five. So, high five. Good job.
Oh, well, thanks again. And if anybody, you have my contact information, so feel free. My cell phone is the number that is listed on there, and I'm pretty much a textaholic. So feel free to text me anytime. So, and just, let me know, hey, I've got a question, and I'm happy to answer it. I do it all the time. So I'm just hanging out here with my kids. So, we're all, kind of just bunkered down, doing what we can to make it through these wonderful times. So, well, thanks again so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was great.
Okay, you guys take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.